If you asked Maggie when she and Tessa became best friends, she couldn't tell you. There wasn't some big moment, no dramatic story about meeting on the first day of school or discovering they had matching tattoos at a gas station. They just happened. 22 years earlier, they worked in the same office. Tessa talked too much, Maggie apologized too much, and somewhere between shared lunches, bad dates, two marriages, three divorces, four kids, one funeral, and enough terrible decisions to qualify as continuing education, they became family. Not the kind you were born into, the kind you pick. Tessa was the loud one. She'd send back the wrong order at a restaurant before Maggie had even decided whether it bothered her. Maggie once ate an entire steak cooked nearly raw because she'd ordered medium and didn't want the waitress to feel bad. Tessa watched her finish half of it before finally saying, Maggie, that cow still has hopes and dreams. Maggie nearly choked laughing. It's fine. You've said it's fine 11 times since we sat down. Because it's fine. No, you don't want to bother anybody. I don't. Exactly. Tessa waved down the waitress. Maggie grabbed her arm. Don't you dare. Excuse me. Tessa. 20 minutes later, Maggie had a new steak, and Tessa had another piece of evidence for a case she'd been building for 22 years. According to Tessa, Maggie needed a backbone. She needed to stop apologizing when somebody else bumped into her. She needed to stop volunteering for things she didn't want to do. She needed to quit loaning money she couldn't afford to lose. And for the love of everything holy, she needed to learn one very simple word: no. Tessa tried everything. She bought Maggie a coffee mug that said nope. She changed Maggie's ringtone on her phone to a recording of herself yelling, Don't answer it. Once, when Maggie agreed to bake 48 cupcakes for a coworker's daughter's birthday party, a child Maggie never actually met, Tessa showed up at her house, looked at the kitchen covered in frosting, and just stood there. Maggie looked up. What? Tessa stared at her. What? Still nothing. Tessa! Finally, Tessa picked up a cupcake, took a bite, and said, I've decided I'm not helping you anymore. You're eating one. That's different. I'm reducing inventory. Maggie laughed. Tessa always made her laugh. That was the thing people didn't understand about them. Tessa could drive Maggie absolutely crazy. But she was also the person who sat beside her in a hospital waiting room until 4 in the morning. She was the person who remembered Maggie's mother's birthday. She knew which song Maggie couldn't listen to anymore and which one to turn up when she needed cheering up. And when Maggie's marriage ended, Tessa showed up with two cardboard boxes, a bottle of wine, and exactly one question. His stuff or yours? Maggie pointed towards the bedroom. Tessa picked up a box. That was that. They didn't keep score. At least, Maggie didn't think they did. Years later, she would remember little moments differently. Sentences that hadn't sounded important at the time. Jokes that weren't quite jokes. Favors that somehow came back up in conversation. But back then, Tessa was her person, and Maggie was Tessa's. So when Tessa told her for what had to be the thousandth time, one of these days, Maggie, you're going to learn how to stand up for yourself. Maggie smiled. And then what are you going to do with me? Tessa laughed. Oh, honey, I'll throw a damn party. Maggie laughed too. Neither of them knew it yet, but eventually, Tessa was going to get exactly what she'd been asking for, and there wasn't going to be a party. The first time Maggie said no and actually meant it, Tessa wasn't there, which was unfortunate because Tessa had been waiting 22 years for this moment, and Maggie was pretty sure she would have wanted pictures. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon at work. Maggie was shutting down her computer when her supervisor, Diane, appeared beside her desk holding a folder. That folder had become something of a tradition. Every few weeks, Diane would appear at 4:55 with something that apparently had been sitting peacefully on her desk all day before suddenly becoming Maggie's emergency. Maggie, before you go, could you take care of this for me? Maggie looked at the folder, then at the clock. 4:56. Normally, this was where she'd smile. Sure. Then she'd text whoever was waiting for her. Running late. Again. But that Tuesday, Maggie didn't reach for the folder. I can't tonight. Diane didn't move. Neither did Maggie. It was remarkable how uncomfortable 4 words could make 2 grown women. Diane smiled. Oh, it shouldn't take very long. There it was, the little opening Maggie always walked through. She could already hear herself saying it. Okay. She could practically feel her hand reaching for the folder. Instead, Maggie picked up her purse. Then you should have plenty of time to finish it. Silence. Maggie's brain immediately began filing emergency paperwork. Too much. That was rude. Fix it. Apologize. She opened her mouth. Then she closed it again. Diane stared at her. Maggie smiled. Have a good night, and walked away. She didn't breathe properly until the elevator doors closed. Then she pulled out her phone. Tessa answered on the second ring. Hey, I did something. There was a pause. Do we need bail money? No. Then I'm already disappointed. Maggie laughed. I told Diane no. Silence. Tessa? I'm sorry. I think the phone cut out. Say that again. I told Diane no. You? Yes, me. Diane with the 455 folders, Diane? That would be the one. What happened? Maggie told her. All of it. The folder, the clock, the 4 words. And then she got to the part about telling Diane that if it wouldn't take very long, she should have plenty of time to finish it herself. Tessa screamed, not metaphorically, actually screamed. Maggie jerked the phone away from her ear. Oh my God! Who are you? Tessa. And what have you done with Maggie? People in the parking lot were looking at her. Maggie didn't care. She was laughing too hard. I was terrified. I don't care. You did it. I almost apologized, but you didn't. No. Say it again. What? No. Maggie laughed. No. Again. No. Louder. No. A man loading groceries into his car looked over. Maggie waved awkwardly. Tessa was dying on the other end of the phone, and something strange happened. Maggie felt good, not guilty, not mean, not selfish. just good. The world hadn't ended. Diane hadn't burst into flames. Nobody had revoked Maggie's membership in polite society. She had simply said no and gone home. That Saturday, Tessa arrived at Maggie's house carrying a tiny gift bag. Maggie looked at it suspiciously. What did you do? Nothing. Tessa, open it. Inside was a cheap plastic trophy. Maggie pulled it out. Tessa had taped a handwritten label across the front. Maggie Bennett said no, and nobody died. Maggie stared at it. You're ridiculous. I am incredibly proud of you. You bought me a trophy? $7.99. You spent $8 because I told somebody no? No, I spent $8 because you've spent 22 years acting like saying no requires approval from Congress. Maggie laughed. Then Tessa got serious. I'm serious, Mags. Maggie looked at her. You don't have to make yourself uncomfortable just so everybody else can stay comfortable. That one stayed with her. Maybe because Tessa wasn't joking anymore. Maybe because Maggie knew she was right. Or maybe because nobody had ever said it quite like that before. Tessa raised her coffee mug. To the new Maggie. Maggie tapped her mug against it. Let's not get carried away. Oh, we're getting carried away. And they did. Over the next few weeks, Maggie started practicing. She declined a committee at work, and she didn't have time for. She told her sister she couldn't babysit with 20 minutes' notice. She stopped lending money to a coworker who somehow had a financial emergency every payday. She even sent back the wrong order at a restaurant. Tessa nearly climbed across the table to hug her. Every time Maggie drew another little line around her life, Tessa celebrated. She encouraged her. She coached her. She reminded Maggie that having boundaries didn't make her selfish. And Maggie believed her. Why wouldn't she? This was Tessa, her person, the woman who had spent 22 years teaching her that no was a complete sentence. There was just one lesson neither of them had considered. Eventually, Tessa was going to ask Maggie for something. It happened on a Thursday. Of course it did. Nothing good ever starts with your phone ringing while you're trying to decide whether the chicken in your refrigerator is still legally considered food. Maggie was standing in her kitchen holding a package of chicken at arm's length when Tessa called. She answered on speaker. Quick question. Maggie looked at the chicken. That's how all your expensive questions start. This isn't expensive, then it's inconvenient. Why do you assume the worst of me? 22 years of research. Tessa laughed. Okay, I need a favor. There it was. Maggie put the chicken down. What kind of favor? My sister is coming into town Saturday. Okay. And I told her I'd help her move some things into the storage unit. Maggie waited. Tessa kept going. But Mark's got that thing with his brother, and my back has been killing me. And honestly, there isn't that much stuff. Maggie smiled. There was another phrase she'd learned to fear. There isn't that much stuff. In Maggie's experience, that sentence had never once been followed by an amount of stuff that could reasonably be described as not that much. What do you need? Could you come help us? Normally, Maggie would have answered before Tessa finished the sentence. Of course. What time? Do you need my truck? Should I bring boxes? Want me to pick up breakfast? Maggie had turned one favor into a catering contract more times than she cared to admit. But Saturday was different. She already had plans, not important plans. That distinction immediately appeared in her brain like opposing counsel. She planned to sleep late, clean the house, do some grocery shopping, and spend the afternoon doing absolutely nothing for once. Maggie looked at the calendar hanging beside the refrigerator. Saturday was blank, and somehow she wanted to keep it that way. I can't Saturday. Silence. Not dramatic silence. Not yet. Just a beat too long. Oh, Maggie immediately felt it. That tiny little pinch in her stomach. She knew that oh. She'd spent half her life responding to that oh. Oh meant I thought you'd help me. Oh meant that's disappointing. Oh meant here is your opportunity to change your answer before I have to ask twice. Maggie waited. Tessa cleared her throat. Well, what are you doing? There it was. Maggie looked around her kitchen. Nothing, technically. I had plans. What plans? And there it was, too. The question Maggie never realized she hated until that exact moment, because now she had to prove her no. Well, nothing major. I just wanted a day at home. Tessa laughed, not meanly, more like Maggie had misunderstood the question. Oh, girl, you can sit at home Sunday. Maggie didn't answer. We'll probably be done by noon anyway. There isn't that much stuff. It won't take very long. You can do your thing afterward. All perfectly reasonable sentences. Maggie knew them well. She'd used them on herself for years. I really don't want to. The silence was different. Tessa laughed again. Excuse me. I said I really don't want to. Well, damn. Maggie smiled despite herself. What? Look at you. What about me? Miss Boundaries. There was humor in Tessa's voice, mostly. Maggie leaned against the counter. You created this monster. I know. Apparently, I should have included terms and conditions. Maggie laughed. Tessa laughed too. And for a second, everything was normal again. Then Tessa said, But seriously, can you help me? Maggie's smile disappeared. She thought maybe Tessa hadn't heard her. I just said no. I know, but I thought you were kidding. Why? Because it's me. 3 words. Nothing particularly remarkable about them, except Maggie felt something shift. Not break. Not yet. Just move. What's that supposed to mean? Oh, come on, Maggie. Don't make it weird. I'm not making it weird. You kind of are. Maggie stared at the phone on the counter. She suddenly wished she'd never put it on speaker. I have helped you with things. I know. A lot of things. I know that too. So I figured you'd help me. Maggie could feel herself reaching for the old answer, the easy answer. Fine, I'll come. What time? She could end the discomfort in 5 seconds. And that realization bothered her more than the conversation did. Because Tessa had taught her to recognize exactly what was happening. Maggie wasn't changing her mind. She was considering changing her answer because Tessa didn't like it. There was a difference, a pretty big one. No, Tessa went quiet. Maggie's heart started pounding, but this time she didn't feel the silence. Finally, Tessa sighed. Okay. Maggie almost relaxed. Then, I just think it's funny. There are very few sentences in the English language followed by anything funny. Maggie closed her eyes. What? All the things that I've done for you. There it was. Small, almost casual, but there. The receipt. Maggie opened her eyes. What does that mean? Nothing. No, you said it. What does it mean? I don't want to fight with you. We're not fighting. Exactly. So let's drop it. Maggie stood very still. A year earlier, she would have dropped it. 6 months earlier, probably. Hell, 6 weeks earlier, definitely. But Tessa had spent 22 years telling Maggie to stop swallowing things just because saying them might make somebody uncomfortable. So Maggie didn't swallow this one. You brought up the things you've done for me because I said I couldn't help you Saturday. I didn't say it like that. How else was I supposed to take it? Oh my God, Maggie. And there it is. Not anger exactly, irritation. Maggie recognized that too. It was the sound people made when the version of her they were accustomed to suddenly required more explanation. Mags, forget it, seriously. Maggie looked down at the phone. She could still fix this. Apologize. Make a joke. Say she'd help. Return everything to normal. Instead, Maggie heard Tessa's voice from that Saturday at the kitchen table. Clear as day. You don't have to make yourself uncomfortable just so everybody else can stay comfortable. Maggie almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, because apparently life had a sense of humor. Tessa, what? You told me something a few weeks ago. Oh, Lord. You said I don't have to make myself uncomfortable just so everybody else can stay comfortable. Silence. Maggie waited. Tessa finally said, That's not what I meant. And there it was, the first crack. Tiny, barely visible, but once Maggie saw it, she couldn't unsee it. They didn't have a huge fight. That would have been almost easier. Tessa said she had to go. Maggie said okay. They said goodbye. No screaming, no insults, no dramatic hang up. The call simply ended. Maggie stood alone in her kitchen. The chicken was still sitting on the counter. She looked at it, then at her phone, then back at the chicken. Well, she picked up the package. At least one of you is definitely bad. And despite herself, Maggie laughed. But the laugh didn't last very long, because underneath all the jokes, one thought had started working its way through her mind. Tessa had spent 22 years asking Maggie to find her voice. She'd celebrated when Maggie used it at work. She'd bought her a trophy. She practically thrown a parade when Maggie sent back a plate of food. Apparently, Maggie having boundaries was wonderful, right up until one of them landed in Tessa's yard. Maggie woke up Friday morning with the strange feeling she'd forgotten something. She hadn't. The feeling was Tessa. Normally, there would have been a text waiting for her. Sometimes it was important. Usually it wasn't. A picture of somebody wearing pajamas at Walmart, a complaint about Mark breathing too loudly, a meme neither of them would admit was funny. 22 years of friendship had created a running conversation that rarely actually stopped. That morning, nothing. Maggie checked her phone again while brushing her teeth. Still nothing. She told herself not to be ridiculous. People were allowed to be busy. Tessa had a life, Maggie had a life. They did not require hourly proof of friendship. At 9:17, Maggie sent her a meme. Seen, no response. Maggie stared at the little word. Well, that's mature. Then immediately felt guilty for saying it, even though Tessa couldn't hear her. Apparently, Maggie's backbone still had office hours. At lunch, Maggie finally texted, Are we okay? Three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, of course, why wouldn't we be? Maggie stared at it. She typed, You seem quiet. Three dots. Just busy. Maggie knew better. Tessa used punctuation when she was irritated. A period from Tessa was basically a slammed door. Maggie typed, If you're upset about yesterday, we can talk about it. This time the response came immediately. I'm not upset. Period. Maggie actually laughed. Oh, we're definitely upset. Saturday morning, Maggie slept until 9:30. It was glorious. She made coffee, opened the curtains, put music on, and for approximately 11 minutes enjoyed the exact Saturday she wanted. Then her phone buzzed. Tessa. Not a message, a photograph. Her sister standing beside a storage unit surrounded by boxes. Another photo followed. Then another. No caption. Maggie stared at them. She knew exactly what they meant. Look at all this. Look what I'm doing. Look where you aren't. Maggie started typing. I'm sorry. She stopped, deleted it, typed again. Hope you guys get it finished quickly. Deleted that too. Finally, she put the phone face down and drank her coffee. It tasted significantly less peaceful than it had 5 minutes earlier. Around noon, Maggie made the mistake of opening Facebook. Tessa had posted a picture from the storage unit. Her sister was holding one end of the dresser. Tessa was holding the other. The caption read, Some people show up when you need them. Maggie stared at it. There were already 17 likes, 3 heart reactions, and one comment from a woman Maggie barely knew. That's what real friends are for. Maggie felt her face get hot. She read the caption again. Maybe it wasn't about her. Of course it was about her. Maybe Tessa hadn't meant it that way. Of course she had. Maggie locked her phone, unlocked it, read it again, because apparently emotional self destruction required confirmation. Maggie called her. Tessa answered cheerfully, too cheerfully. Hey, girl. Maggie skipped the pleasantries. Is that post about me? Silence. What post? You know what post. Oh my God, Maggie. There it was again, that exhausted little tone, like Maggie had become a customer asking to speak to management. It was a picture of my sister with a caption. So, some people show up when you need them. It's Facebook. I know where you posted it, Tessa. Tessa sighed. Not everything is about you. That one landed. Maggie sat down. I didn't say everything was. Then why are you calling me about a Facebook post? Because we've been friends for 22 years and I know when you're taking a shot at me. Wow. What? Nothing. No, we're done with nothing. Say it. Another silence. Then Tessa laughed. You really have changed. Maggie didn't answer immediately because there it was. the sentence underneath every other sentence. You keep saying that like it's a bad thing. I didn't say it was. You don't have to. Maggie, I supported you changing. I know. I encouraged you. I know. I've been telling you for years to stop letting people walk all over you. I know. Then what exactly are you accusing me of? Maggie took a breath. Wanting me to have boundaries with everybody except you. Silence. Much longer this time. Then Tessa said, "That is ridiculous." Maybe it was. Maggie genuinely wondered, because 22 years is a long time, long enough to know somebody, long enough to misunderstand somebody, and definitely long enough to develop habits neither person realizes are habits. So Maggie asked the simplest question she could think of. If somebody else asked me to give up my Saturday after I'd already said no, what would you tell me? Tessa didn't answer. Maggie continued. You'd tell me I didn't owe them an explanation. Still nothing. You'd tell me they were guilt tripping me. Maggie, and if they started listening everything they'd ever done for me, that's not fair. Maggie almost smiled. There it was again. That's not what I meant. That's not fair. The rules worked perfectly until Tessa had to live under those rules too. Neither of them apologized. That was unusual. Normally, one of them would crack. Usually Maggie. A joke, a subject change, some tiny bridge back to normal. Not this time. Tessa finally said, I need to go. Maggie nodded even though Tessa couldn't see her. Okay, talk later. Yeah, the call ended. Maggie sat quietly with the phone in her lap. 22 years, thousands of conversations, hundreds of arguments, and somehow this one felt different because for the first time, Maggie wasn't afraid that standing up for herself might make somebody angry. She was beginning to wonder something much harder. What if the only reason some people liked the old Maggie was because the old Maggie was easier for them? 3 days passed. For Maggie and Tessa, 3 days might as well have been 6 months. No memes, no pictures, no complaints about husbands, coworkers, neighbors, traffic, weather, grocery prices, or whatever celebrity Tessa had randomly decided she hated that week. Nothing. Maggie almost texted her at least 20 times. She'd pick up the phone, open their messages, type something, delete it. Once she got as far as, "This is stupid," then stared at those 3 words for nearly a minute because it was stupid, and it wasn't. The argument was stupid. What Maggie had learned from it wasn't. She deleted the message. Monday evening, her phone rang. Tessa? Maggie stared at the name, then answered. Hey. Hey. And somehow, 2 women who had spent 22 years talking about absolutely everything had no idea what to say. Finally, Tessa broke the silence. Can I come over? Maggie looked around the living room like she needed to check with management. Now? Unless you've got plans. There was just enough bite in it to notice. Maggie noticed. Tessa noticed Maggie noticed. Then Tessa sighed. Sorry. It was the first apology either of them had offered. Maggie closed her eyes. Yeah, come over. 20 minutes later, Tessa was standing at Maggie's front door holding 2 coffees. Not wine, not boxes, not a joke gift. Coffee. Peace negotiations had apparently begun. Maggie opened the door. Tessa held 1 cup towards her. I didn't know what else to bring. Maggie took it. This is fine. Tessa raised an eyebrow. Maggie froze. They both remembered. It's fine. For the first time in 3 days, they laughed. It wasn't much, but it was something. They sat at Maggie's kitchen table, the same table where Tessa had once handed her a $7.99 trophy for saying no. Neither mentioned the irony. Yet. Tessa wrapped both hands around her coffee. I was mad. Maggie nodded. I know. I didn't think I was. You posted it on Facebook. I said I didn't think I was. I didn't say I wasn't an idiot. Maggie almost smiled. Tessa looked down. I really did think you'd help me. I know. And when you didn't, she stopped. Maggie waited. Tessa tried again. I took it personally. There it was. Not an excuse, not yet an apology, but finally the truth. Why? Tessa looked at her. Because you're you? Maggie gave her a look. Tessa groaned. I know how that sounds now. Not great. No. They sat quietly. When Tessa said something Maggie wasn't expecting, I think I liked being needed. Maggie didn't interrupt. Tessa stared into her coffee. For years, I was the one who told you what to say, who to tell no, when somebody was taking advantage of you, when you were being ridiculous. You still tell me when I'm being ridiculous. Because you still are. Maggie smiled. Tessa didn't. But I think, she hesitated, I think somewhere along the way, I got used to being the strong one. Maggie smiled, disappeared. Tessa continued. And you changing meant you didn't need me to do that anymore. Maggie hadn't considered that. Not once. The, this wasn't really about a storage unit. It wasn't even about boundaries. Something in their friendship had changed, and Tessa was scared of what would be left when Maggie didn't need rescuing anymore. Maggie reached across the table. You know I still need you, right? Tessa looked at her. Just differently. Tessa's eyes drifted towards the little shelf beside Maggie's kitchen, and there it was, the trophy. Best use of the word no. Tessa stared at it. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Maggie followed her eyes and started laughing. Tessa pointed at it. You kept that stupid thing. You gave it to me. It was $7.99. You left the sticker on it. I was making a point. Oh, you made one. Tessa covered her face. Maggie was laughing hard now. You literally bought me an award for saying no. I know. And then I said no to you. I know, Maggie. And you lost your mind. I'm aware of the irony. For the first time since Thursday, they sounded like themselves again. Then Maggie picked up the trophy. Her laughter faded. She turned it over in her hands. You meant it when you gave me this. Tessa looked at her. Yeah. You really wanted me to change. Yeah. Maggie nodded. Then you have to let me. That one sat between them. Tessa looked down. I owe you an apology. Maggie waited. I shouldn't have brought up everything I've done for you. No. And the Facebook thing was childish. Very. Don't enjoy this. I'm trying not to. Tessa smiled, then became serious again. But you owe me something too. Maggie's eyebrows went up. Tessa quickly raised a hand. Not an apology. Good start. I need you to tell me when I'm doing it. Doing what? Expecting the old Maggie? Maggie thought about that. No, Tessa blinked. What? Maggie leaned back. No. Tessa stared at her. Then Maggie smiled. It's not my job to manage your reaction to my boundaries. Tessa's mouth fell open. Oh, you are getting way too good at this. Maggie laughed. But I will talk to you. Tessa nodded. Fair. And I'll listen. Fair. And sometimes I'll still help you move. Tessa smiled. Also fair. But not on my Saturday. Okay, now you're just being difficult. Tessa picked up her coffee. Maggie picked hers up. For a moment, neither said anything. Then Tessa looked at the trophy. You remember what I told you? Maggie did. Of course she did. 22 years earlier, Tessa had started building a case. One restaurant order, one favor, one apology, one unnecessary yes at a time. And eventually, she told Maggie, one of these days you're going to learn how to stand up for yourself. Maggie had asked, and then what are you going to do with me? Tessa had laughed. I'll throw you a damn party. Maggie looked around the kitchen. Two coffees, one ridiculous trophy, no balloons, no cake, no party. She smiled. Well, Tessa looked confused. Well, what? You promised me a party. Tessa stared at her, then she laughed. Oh, honey. She raised her coffee. I think this is it. Maggie raises hers. They tap cups. It wasn't the friendship they'd had before. It couldn't be, because Maggie wasn't the woman she'd been before. And maybe that was the part neither of them understood when this all started. Sometimes growing doesn't mean leaving people behind. Sometimes it means giving the people who love you a chance to learn how to love the person you become. Later that night, after Tessa left, Maggie carried the empty coffee mugs into the kitchen. She stopped at the shelf, picked up the trophy, looked at it, and smiled. Then she found a black marker. Under best use of the word no, Maggie carefully added, even with Tessa. She put the trophy back, turned off the kitchen light, and walked away because Maggie had finally learned something Tessa couldn't teach her. Finding your voice isn't the hardest part. The hardest part is using it with the people you love and trusting the ones who truly love you back will eventually learn how to hear it.